Alcatraz, the secret life of America's most notorious prison. Isolated, ominous, and engulfed in mystery, Alcatraz sits frozen in time in the chilling waters of San Francisco Bay. For nearly 3 decades, it was America's most notorious prison, a fortress built to house the country's most dangerous men. But beyond its weathered walls lie stories of grit, fear, and defiance. Narratives more compelling than its reputation suggests. Welcome to Alcatraz, a place that is part history, part legend, and wholly captivating. Long before it became synonymous with punishment, Alcatraz Island was just a barren, rocky outpost. Native Americans once avoided it, believing it was cursed. Later, the U.S. military turned it into a fortress and eventually a prison to isolate deserters and criminals. But it wasn't until 1934 that Alcatraz became the federal government's ultimate solution for crime. A high-security penitentiary designed to house the so-called worst of the worst. Strategically placed in the icy waters of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz was considered inescapable. Its isolation was psychological torture in itself, a stone cage deliberately chosen to break the spirits of its inhabitants. Behind its chilling facade, Alcatraz once imprisoned some of America's most infamous names. Al Capone, the untouchable mob boss, spent his days playing a battered banjo in the prison band. His empire crumbled to nothing. George Machine Gun Kelly, notorious for his violent escapades, lived in muted monotony, reduced to standing in service lines and following strict prison rules. Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman of Alcatraz, became a curiosity. Known for his love of birds while housed in Leavenworth Penitentiary, Stroud's reputation as an eccentric masked the fact that he was a convicted murderer and not the harmless intellectual portrayed in films. Each inmate came to Alcatraz as a larger-than-life villain, only to have the island reduce them to ordinary men under relentless restriction. What was life really like in Alcatraz? Stark and regimented, it was a world ruled by isolation and routine. Prisoners were confined to 5-foot by 9-foot cells, with iron bars and minimal furnishings, a steel bed, a basin, and a small shelf. The dismal atmosphere was made worse by the chilling winds that swept through, especially during winter. Every aspect of the inmates' lives was controlled down to the minute. Meals were simple but consistent, giving prisoners one of the few comforts of predictability. The library provided books, but little freedom of thought, as all materials were heavily censored. Those deemed compliant could work in the main industries on the island, such as laundry or gardening, while less agreeable prisoners spent hours in isolation cells. Guards patrolled ceaselessly, enforcing discipline in a fortress where even minor rule infractions meant severe punishment. Yet, there were occasional moments of humanity. Guards and inmates sometimes found brief mutual respect in an otherwise oppressive environment. Through strict regimentation, Alcatraz became a kind of experiment. Could complete control break the criminal mind? For many, it did. For others, it sparked the fiery desire to escape. Alcatraz's reputation as an escape-proof prison became its defining trait. The harsh tides and freezing waters of the bay seemingly created a natural moat, alongside alert guards stationed at every corner. The prison itself was designed with advanced security for its time. Strategically placed guard towers, gun galleries, and double-layered fencing stood as barriers to freedom. But not everyone was deterred. Over the years, 14 bold escape attempts were made, involving 36 prisoners. Some tried crawling through tunnels, scaling fences, or even swimming to the mainland. Nearly all of them failed. Of all the escape attempts, none is as mysterious or as audacious as what took place on the evening of June 11, 1962. That night, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, vanished from their cells. Months of meticulous planning had led up to it. They dug through vent openings using stolen tools, created a raft from raincoats, and fashioned dummy heads to trick guards during bed checks. It was a masterstroke of ingenuity. By dawn, they were gone. What happened next remains a mystery. The trio is suspected to have perished in the bay's treacherous waters, but no bodies were ever recovered. Decades later, rumors, sightings, and even supposed letters from the escapees emerged, keeping the mystery of their fate alive. The question still haunts Alcatraz. Did anyone truly succeed in escaping its grasp? Despite its notoriety, Alcatraz's days as a high-security prison ended abruptly in 1963. Officially, it was deemed too expensive to maintain. The salt air corroded structures, and isolated logistics made running the prison a financial burden. However, some argue there were deeper cracks in its foundation. Critics of the harsh treatment and solitary isolation raised moral questions about its continued use. It had served its purpose, but at a cost too great to continue. After its closure, it stood abandoned, its mystique growing with each passing year. Visitors began to explore the island, turning what was once a feared institution into a fascination. Beyond its historical intrigue, Alcatraz's abandoned corridors have taken on an eerie presence. Former prisoners and guards claim to have experienced unexplainable sensations. Phantom whispers, footsteps in empty halls, even distant echoes of banjo music thought to be from Al Capone himself. Ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts flock to the island, convinced it is haunted by the restless souls of those who suffered there. Whether true or not, these stories add yet another layer to Alcatraz's allure. An island of historical pain, shrouded in supernatural mystery. As years turned to decades, Alcatraz cemented itself as more than a historic site. It became a symbol in popular culture. Films, books, and documentaries chronicling its infamous inmates and daring escape attempts have fueled its legendary status. The 1979 movie, Escape from Alcatraz, brought Frank Morris's story to life on screens worldwide. But the real-life tales remain stranger than fiction. Alcatraz thrives not just through its documented history, but through its power of imagination, serving as a metaphor for extreme isolation, punishment, and human resilience. Today, Alcatraz stands as a crumbling reminder of America's past, a fortress of punishment surrounded by currents of intrigue. It invites us to reflect, ponder, and wonder. What secrets still linger behind its thick walls? Were justice and morality truly served here, or did they erode alongside the concrete? As the sun sets over San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz remains, wrapped in layers of shadow and legend. For history buffs, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved. And for those brave enough to peer into its darkness, one truth is clear. Alcatraz is far more than a prison. It's a haunting chapter of history that will never let us go.